Hi there. I'm Claudia Hosky from Fed Insider, and on behalf of the George Washington University College of Professional Studies, CareSoft and Lookout, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's webinar on mobile threat intelligence, rethinking what your traditional EDR is missing. Please type your questions and comments into the Q&A pod. If we don't get to them during today's discussion, we'll share them with our speakers so they can follow up with you. Also, take note of the Resources tab on the left side of your screen to download today's slides. We offer live captioning for all of our webinars. To follow along with us, use the hyperlink under the Live Captioning or CART tab located above the slides. We'll have the full transcript available for download in the next day or two. And to earn training credit for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all survey questions and stay online for the duration of our hour-long conversation. And now, let me turn over the reins to our moderator, Jane Norris from Fed Insider. Take it away, Jane.
Thanks a lot, Claudia. And thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Beautiful day. So we're going to talk about an issue that has been, I think, bubbling under the Hot 100, and that is mobile security. And we have two expert panelists that you're going to really enjoy hearing from. So you're going to meet them in just a moment. But first, let me talk about the issue for just a second. There have been several cyber attacks recently. You're aware of them, okay? They were launched through users' mobile devices, often targeting high-profile government officials. For instance, the FBI and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, released a joint statement in November 2024 about their ongoing investigation into the People's Republic of China targeting commercial telecommunications infrastructure, which revealed a broad and significant cyber espionage campaign. These kinds of incursions by bad actors are on the part of hostile nation states, which led to CISA's release of a mobile communications best practices guide. But the attacks also highlight the need for agencies to treat mobile as a frontline asset in their threat intelligence operations. Today, our esteemed speakers, who you'll meet in just a sec, from government and industry, discuss the current state of the mobile threat horizon, emerging threats, and how modern threat intelligence practices can adapt to and defend against adversaries who increasingly exploit mobile to bypass traditional controls. So before we get into this fascinating discussion, and I guarantee you it will be, let us meet our speakers. Funico Brown joins us today. Funico is Chief Information Security Officer for the U.S. Transportation Command, or TRANSCOM. Funico, thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little about your work.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Funico Brown, U.S. TRANSCOM CISO. Here at U.S. TRANSCOM, our mission is to project the joint force globally. That entails us delivering lethal aid, personnel, or even just support and supplies to our allies and partners. Because of our global mission, I consider us to be one of the biggest data brokers in the world, and that kind of keeps me busy because we have to secure all of that data. Our biggest initiative right now is we have some efforts to reduce our overall attack surface by bringing some of our systems and programs a little bit closer within our perimeter. And then zero trust is a buzzword that we are keen on right now. Just a little bit of a background about me. Grew up in beautiful South Georgia, Valdosta, Georgia. Played football all my life. Got a scholarship to the University of Georgia. But then my NFL dreams came to a screeching halt. Hurt my leg, my knee. But Uncle Sam had his arms open. So I spent 20 years in the U.S. Air Force in the field of cybersecurity and information assurance. So as of now, I think I've been doing information security for the majority of my life right now. But I'm very excited to meet you all and speak to you for a little bit, and glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, first of all, for your service. And it sounds like you're going to have a great amount of information to share with all of our listeners. So thanks a lot, Funico. And also joining us is James Coyle. James is Chief Technology Officer for the public sector at Lookout. James, or Jim, welcome. Thanks for being here. Tell us about your work.
Yeah, Jane, appreciate it. And, afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. So I've been supporting the government for the last 20 years in cyber. For the last 15, it's been on the front lines, meaning the majority of threat actors that have been attacking not just the federal government, but, organizations worldwide, I've been very closely aligned with. And so that's been giving me a unique opportunity to firsthand see what attackers are doing, how they're moving around, what are the vulnerabilities they're starting to utilize, but also really got close to threat intelligence. And so through that avenue, really being able to understand not just the adversary and what their goals are, but even from a geopolitical global outlook, what's their goal? Why are they attacking, various different agencies or various different groups? And more importantly, why are they using specific methodologies like mobile devices in order to further their goals?
Those are very interesting questions. I'm sure you have some answers that you'll share with us a little bit. All right, thanks, gentlemen. It's so great to have you both here. You can find their biographies on the resources tab on the Zoom chat that you're in. And if you have a question, we'd love to hear from you. So please ask your questions and we'll make them visible to our speakers. So Funico, if we could start with you, can you talk about the pivot that government and defense agencies are making to a mobile first environment? Traditional security approaches were never designed for mobile first. So how, in your opinion, can agencies improve their monitoring and authentication capabilities?
Yes, thank you. So as agencies move to a mobile first environment or approach to their operations, there's several advantages and disadvantages, right? I mean, the advantages are, of course, cost savings, geographic flexibility, improved citizen visibility, AKA they can track where you're at, and enhanced communications and collaboration. But from a security perspective, this new approach isn't really designed to fit into our traditional cybersecurity mindset. I mean, our mindset is to have a perimeter where everything internal is basically, for the most part, trusted. But these edge devices don't work like that. A lot of times, internally, we're going to have what we call a standard desktop configuration. We're all going to have the same laptop, same computers, not with mobile phones, right? You're going to have Samsung, Nokia, Apple, and they're going to be utilized on public, untrusted networks a lot of times. That makes you susceptible to threats like data leakage, malware, phishing, spyware, social engineering. We all remember the old OPM data breach, but now that was on a laptop. Now you're going to have that particular issue on your personal cell phone. To address some of this, I mean, I recommend that people, I think I said it before, implement a zero trust architecture, right? Instead of just trusting everything internally, you're going to validate all the and authenticate and authorize all of your connections continuously. And they can be achieved through using technologies like biometrics, behavioral analytics, microsegmentation, right? When I talk about microsegmentation, sometimes people don't really visualize it. So to help visualize it, I mean, think of a warehouse, right? Our traditional approach is you break into the warehouse, you have access to all of the contents. Microsegmentation is like breaking into a mansion full of many rooms. Walking up to the mansion, there's cameras, there's gates, and as you get into the mansion, every room is locked. Every room inside there, if you want the contents, those contents are in a safe. That's microsegmentation. Highly recommend that people leverage what I want to call a mobile app vetting system used by CISA. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other best practices, but of course, the basics like encryption, MFA, and training your users. I mean, you can have all these great tools and technologies, but I mean, it comes down to the people and training your people. So back over to you.
You talked a little bit about all the data that you manage, in your job. So does it also require that you are managing that data and prioritizing which data needs to be protected?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Data retention is key to it, and logging that data, and scrutinizing, and looking for, anomalous activity. So, I mean, we're going to talk about EDR a little bit, but yeah, data management and data governance is key to our business.
Yeah, it's absolutely the truth. Protecting data is really the answer to everything, pretty much. Thanks very much, Funico. Great conversation. James, I'm going to bring you in. Similar question to you. Endpoint detection and response. We've been talking about that for quite a few years, but now it's mobile detection and response. So with the evolution of endpoint detection, has mobile had the same sort of evolution, or what does it need in order to make that jump?
Yeah, Jane, great question. Appreciate it. So, it's funny. I think mobile kind of has been left out in a lot of various different, security groups, right? Typically, what we've seen just over the last 10 years, mobile is owned by the mobile group. Security just kind of says, hey, there's a thing on my network. I need that data. Or if they're even knowing about, this mobile capability. And so because of that, there has been, this disconnect between not just, the mobility teams and the security teams, and then ultimately the CISO up at the top, but more importantly, how do they best understand not just the risk to the organization, but more importantly, how do they answer to the risk, right? And so at least what we have done, and every vendor is a little different, but what we've done is we've actually provided a way to not just be able to get the insight of what's happening in the operating system, what's happening in the applications, are there vulnerabilities, what are their classifications, are they critical vulnerabilities, or are they just, a lower criticality? And then more importantly, great, there's vulnerabilities and they're labeled critical, but is anybody actually using this? And do I really need to be worried about it? Do I have to enforce patch management now? Or is there, contextual information? And that's, where we're starting to provide a lot of that data. We're providing that contextual information. We're providing, hey, this attacker is doing X, Y, and Z. Here's the mobile malware families they're utilizing. These are the types of folks that they go to. And we're providing all of that up front. And, that's just kind of like the first initial touch. When we talk about detection and response, it's not enough to just detect. You actually have to start to respond to it. But from a response perspective, and in the mobile world, the way that the mobility sandboxing security, technology is kind of designed, you're not supposed to move outside of your own little sandbox that you're given by the mobile providers. And that's not always the case from an attacker's perspective. But it makes it harder to be able to do things like file acquisitions, grabbing very intensive data, packet captures off of a mobile device and that type of thing. So when we talk about EDR, yes, there's still paths forward, but I think what we're starting to showcase is really how do we best incorporate the security teams with the mobility teams and all of the executive teams to where risk matters? How can we showcase, the risk, not just to the individuals, which is where, Finico has just talked about, right? Having that personal information, but more importantly, what does that mean from a business perspective? You would outline, the FBI and CISA having that joint statement, that was put out. What we're starting to see is the attackers hitting mobile devices first, then going into, the enterprise world. And how do you piece that together? And that's the data points that we're starting to provide today.
So talk to me about the meshing of teams, because people do have silos, right? And I know the government is working to break down silos as well as industry. Tell me how that manifests in a real world scenario. How do you get teams to work together to this is mine, this is yours, this is now ours?
Yeah, great question. And I'd love to say it's a problem that's easily solved, but sometimes it's rather complex because a lot of times it's on who right? It's our job as vendors to make sure that we're showcasing the value that we're bringing, to the table. But more importantly, it's also our job to ensure that everybody knows what can be done with that value. Now, we've been creating a lot of industry first, ultimately since we came out as a company, right? We kind of created the mobile security market by showcasing vulnerabilities in Bluetooth. Today, and I'll talk about some of the stuff that we're working on a little later, but right now we're able to tell the security teams, hey, if Joe is getting spearphished through SMS or WhatsApp or Signal or Facebook Messenger, and there's lots of phishing messages that are occurring, that data can go to a SIM or an XDR. Then analytics can be applied to user behavioral analytics against the identity access management tools. If somebody's getting phished, that account is probably going to eventually get breached. But by having all of this data together and having the security teams access this data, we can now start to talk about how do we reduce not just the risk to the organization, but more importantly, how do we identify that an account has been breached far faster than we have ever before?
All right, this is fascinating information. Thanks a lot. Finico, back to you. I mean, similar, really a question to you, but more specific about the threat signal. So what best practices can agencies use to analyze the telemetry and behavior indicators that distinguish mobile threats from traditional endpoint threats?
Yes, due to the unique security challenges that mobile devices present, some of the best practice that I've come across are at the very basic level, deploy a mobile threat solution, a solution that's going to monitor your network traffic, your app behavior, your device activity for malicious actions and potential risks. These these technologies will help you kind of stave off some of the zero-day attacks or previously unknown attack vectors. Integrate your MTD, your mobile threat defense solution, with your mobile device management system. So what that's going to do is pretty much allow you to centralize control over your mobile endpoints, help you enforce your security policies, and enhance your overall security management. This helps you manage if a device is out of date as far as their update, which is key. I mean, it's an easy way for adversaries to get in. It's going to alert the administrators and allow them to take action. It also allows you to take immediate actions as far as remote wiping or locking the device when necessary. A lot of EDR solutions nowadays are leveraging the power of AI. So it's a great tool. I mean, because data, it's vast. I mean, it can be a bit much for the human eye to kind of sifts through. So using AI allows you to identify those little needles in a haystack, those subtle patterns of malicious behavior. And also making sure that you're plugged into the advanced mobile threat intelligence feeds and databases that are made available. That way you're always getting, you're always being made aware of the emerging threats that are coming to bear. And then doing forensics and threat hunting across all of your telemetry is key. You need to look at your logs, your alerts, and then pay attention to your mobile specific behaviors, the things you really wouldn't deal with in the office on a computer. At least for government, we don't. But as far as Wi-Fi connections, you're in the airport or in a hotel, you're apt to connect to some of that free Wi-Fi. And also, when you're in the App Store, making a choice to look for that application that's going to enhance your efficiency, but could be made by a nation state actor to get into your device and get access to some of your private information. And the basic configurations of excessive app permissions. With my iPhone, I'm always asked, I mean, do you want to allow this app to track you or follow you? Of course, you don't want to have that happen. And we'll talk more about, strong identity and access management a little bit later and doing your basic patching and your software updates. But those are just a few of the things that I would recommend as far as best practices.
Sounds great. Jim, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and I'm actually really glad that you brought up the a lot of data perspective. That's no joke. When we think about the overall security groups, right, and we start thinking about how do we really manage security, again, easier said than done, I know, but when we're able to bring across multiple data sets to be able to arm the defenders with the information that they truly need, magic happens. Risk starts getting removed, right? You start having a better posture, you start getting better defenses. And just from a mobile standpoint, right? And this is kind of where I want folks to really understand the depth and breadth of some of the problems and challenges that mobile, right, has, not just, the desktop world. So we've done the analysis and we're getting telemetry from around 234 million devices, right? And that telemetry is all anonymized. We take privacy very, very seriously, but what we are looking at is what the attackers are doing to those devices. Now, we've also done the reverse engineering of over 393 million mobile apps. That's a lot of applications, right? Now, when we talk about that, we're talking about not just seeing the behaviors of these applications, what are they doing, how are they developed, right? But we're talking about static and dynamic analysis for the most part. Now, when we take a look at that data and we have an understanding of what malicious looks like, what's evil look like, right? Versus what might be, slightly leaky data, right? What might be, bringing your personal information out, such as various different social media applications. That is a host of information that can be utilized both from a security group, from a vulnerability management system, because now we can help make those MDMs or the mobile device managers understand, hey, you know what? There's an app. My team wants to use it because of X, Y, and Z. But according to the analysis, that's beyond my risk tolerance, right? And you can make those decisions based on that informed analysis. Again, it's a lot of data, but that's where I think some of the public-private sector partnerships really come into play, because this is what we live and breathe all day long. This is what we're good at. Being able to provide that information to the security team so they can make the necessary decisions to reduce that risk. That's what we're all about.
Federico, we were going to talk about app security a little later, but you want to jump in here and give your perspective?
So app security, it's like a double-edged sword for me to a certain degree. Like Jim said, there's a lot of advantage to picking an app that's gonna make you a little bit more efficient, a little bit more lethal than what you do on a day-to-day basis. But I love the way that they kind of vet those apps, and that's key. Having that validation of the app before it's onboarded, and that comes into what I would consider the need for governance and policy and training. As I said before, we focus on going out and purchasing the brightest and shiniest tool that's out there, but we negate the fact that we need to train our personnel. We need to have governance and policies that kind of dictate what you can and can't do, and kind of exercise from there.
So when you evaluate the risks that certain apps bring to your environment, do you try to work that out before the app ever becomes available, or what's your process like?
Oh yeah, the software development lifecycle kind of entails, we bake in security as opposed to latch it on at the end. Years ago, our software developers, and they would kind of push everything through our CI/CD pipeline, and then come to security at the tail end. I'm like, no, this will never hit the streets, for lack of better terms, because it hasn't been properly evaluated. I see so many flaws and vulnerabilities that can be exploited. So I think you have to work hand in hand with your development team, excuse me. And we're tribes, security people. We're very, so what you can do, cannot do, very black and white. Software developers, from my experience, they're mavericks. They love to create things and be innovative, but we find balance.
So therein lies the issue, I think, right? How do you promote innovation, which everybody says they want to do, and still maintain that security balance?
Absolutely.
Jim, did you have a comment on that? I saw you shaking your head. I swore you wanted to comment.
Just in complete agreement. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
All right. I wanted to ask you, Jim, about we are living through very perilous times. Regions like Israel and Ukraine, conflicts all over the world, really. Have exposed new cyber vulnerabilities. Speaking of innovation, are there battlefield initiatives or innovations that have been developed as a result? Because we are really in a constant state of bombardment at this point.
Yeah, great question. So, we have to look at the human element today, right? And this is where attackers are starting to focus. It's no longer just a pure, hey, I can go on Shodan and go do a search of vulnerable systems and write it, either utilize a tool or write a script to then go after those vulnerable targets. That's a lot of work, right? And what I mean by that is, if I go after an individual, social media, previous breach data, right? I already know that that I'm looking for somebody at a particular target. That's all I need to know. If I do my homework as an attacker, which doesn't take all that much with all the data breaches of the last years, I can find an individual, link to their phone number, and now begin my attack, right? So I've done my reconnaissance. There's zero visibility from a security standpoint during that recon phase, right? Because you're talking about breach data. Nobody's got some kind of magical tool that's reading breach data at the moment saying, attacker's now reading this data, we have a problem, right? So immediately after, at least from our perspective, again, and I came from the desktop world, so I've seen what happens when you go through from an incident response perspective. I see what happens when they attack, desktops and servers and cloud environments. But from a mobile aspect, that is way harder to start to move into that detection phase unless you have, what Finico had brought up. You need to have some kind of, mobile threat defense. You need to have a mobile device management, set up, because if you don't have both, you're blind in this avenue where the human element is the target. So whether it's you getting targeted as an individual or you being targeted because you work for an organization that attacker wants access to, it's your information that they're going after. It's your mobile device, right? You're getting the SMS messages, not the organization. Mm-hmm. You're getting, those spear fishes, not the organization. Like, sure, they may send a spearfish email as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but in today's targeting, what we call, the modern kill chain at Lookout, the modernization of the Lockheed Martin kill chain, what we're starting to see is the rapid success of going from recon to breach. And we take a look at groups like Scattered Spider, Octopus, Lapsus, and how they're all closely aligned. They are having a field day because they're utilizing that mobile first world, whether it's through phone calls, in vishing, or SMS, text phishing, or, even just as simple as, going after the MFA tokens from a mobile perspective, right? And doing things like SIM swap attacks. Mobile and the identity of that human element and that mobile device is what they're going after.
Yes, that is what they're going after. And increasingly, I think we're all looking for ways to blunt that kind of attack, or at least manifest, show that this is manifesting and stop it before it spreads further into a system. So, Finico, I want to ask you about the use of AI. That definitely is something that we're all considering, and some of us using, to stop cybersecurity attacks. What's your biggest concern about the use of AI? And you talked when we did a pre-brief earlier this week. You talked a little about large language model poisoning. So talk to us about some of the things that you are considering when you evaluate these new technologies.
Absolutely. AI seems to be the buzzword nowadays. Everyone loves it. Everybody runs to it. On your phones as they come out with the new models, we're going to integrate AI into it. But there's a dark side to AI. So when I think about the dark side, I think about large language model poisoning. And what that is manipulating that train of data that goes into a lot of your AI models. And it can lead to a myriad of different things. Degraded performance. Poison data can result in, inaccurate or biased predictions that impacts the decision making of the teams using that capability. For example, if you use I've seen it done, your AI to hey, what's the best way to secure my environment? What configurations should I have? If that model has been poisoned, an adversary is going to tell you, open up these ports right here, set these configurations there, and you're going to create backdoors for adversaries to get in. So be very careful about trusting everything that AI generates because of the potential for large language model poisoning. It can also do a lot of damage to your reputation or your business's reputation because they can get in there, adversaries, and create biased or harmful content as a result. I've seen that on the news. I think some of us have come across a couple of stories. But some of the things that you can do to kind of get past that is to implement a robust data validation and tracking process. Scrutinize that training data, reevaluate it, track the authoritative origins of that data, employ version controls of your training models. I recommend layered security approaches, combine software solutions that have encryption, access controls, and then of course, I'm going to foot stomp it a million times, operational policies that kind of dictate how you manage and utilize AI. And then back to, of course, employee training. Not everyone's going to understand how to use AI out of the box. They're not going to understand which questions are ethical, if you will, and kind of move from there. But audit, update your models, validate them, and invest in human oversight. Please do not blindly just trust AI. You still need a degree of human oversight to ensure that judgment has been judiciously applied to critical mission decisions. So.
I find this fascinating. I find this whole topic and conversation fascinating. So, Jim, you work with a lot of different clients. You work in the defense realm as well. Can you talk to us about LLMs and how they work in automation, sort of in the AI process? Can you explain how they are valuable and what really we should be on the lookout for, as Funico is talking about?
Yeah, Jane, great question. This is something that is a little bit close to my heart because over the years, one of the things that, the security community overall has been trying to identify is how do I get better? And not just as like an individual and skill sets and that thing, but how do I find attacks faster? How do I answer to the attacks faster? How do I do my job better, right? And so AI certainly has various, opened up various different avenues for that to occur. Now, of course, as Funico had pointed out, right, there's also some things that you need to think about when utilizing AI and the data and where it goes and who has access to it and who's messing with it, right? So for us in our kind of approach to this, right, how do we operationalize the data that's getting utilized today in a defensive posture? So there's a couple of things that we've done. So first, from an administrative perspective, and I thought this was pretty neat because as a former deployment engineer, I really hated going through certain vendors' admin guides because it could link you to a guide that no longer exists. It could provide you incorrect information, or in some cases, it would give you 3 options to choose from, but only tell you about one. So what we did is we actually trained an AI model on our user guide and provided for administrators. How do we utilize LLMs to increase productivity, right? That was kind of, one avenue. Another avenue is our detection capabilities. We've started utilizing AI or mathematical statistical analysis or whatever, it wants to be called. But what we've started to do is we've started to say, okay, great. Well, how can we combine things like fuzzy logic around malware families, around various different malicious apps? Are they the same family? Are they the same attacker? And we're utilizing those models in a defensive posture. Now, these are supervised models, so we know the input and we know the output. This is a closed off system that we're managing. And that is increasing our detection capability, especially when we talk about new families, especially when we talk about new capabilities that adversaries are bringing to the table. Now, little bit futures talk here, but we are on the horizon for solving some of again, that human element problem on how do we better determine whether an SMS or a phishing attack on a mobile avenue, how do we help determine in a much quicker and a better way that something is malicious? And so we've got an AI model today that we're about to release that ultimately is bringing that anti-phishing capability that we've already got into a next gen world, if you will. And we've also got some pretty cool prototyping that we've done around some other avenues, such as phishing or voicemail phishing or even voice phishing. And I'm pretty excited where that's going. But again, this is where AI is helping operationalize that defense. This is the world that we all want to get to. How can we best utilize AI in that defensive capability, but more importantly, operationalizing it? It's great to talk about AI. It's great to talk about the things it can do, but showing and actually doing better because of AI, that's the magic.
So that sounds like a very different application of AI. It sounds like it's a more sophisticated version of figuring out what's real and what's not.
That's absolutely right. And even just like from a personal level, some of the things that, I've done, most of the, various different industries, are putting out their intelligence reports, especially at the end of or at the beginning of the year. Everybody wants to do their year in review. As a threat intelligence researcher, how do you best understand what's going on? Hey, I can ask AI, here's some documents. Please go review, give me the differences, give me, the unique capabilities that each report has, but I also want to know the similarities, and then I want to understand the trends. And, even something as simple as that in being able to operationalize at open source data, right? Because now we're not talking about internal sourcing or internal data that may be sensitive, but how am I operationalizing a better way of understanding what's happening in the world? Now, of course, you have to do your own analysis, right? I'm not saying leave everything up to AI. I'm not saying that at all. Definitely not. You always need to have eyes on a result, and that's just the way the world is. So, being able to do that though, and providing your own analysis, I mean, it's a quicker, faster way to understand. And again, just being better at your job.
This is really fascinating. So, Fanico, I know that we talked about the MITRE ATT&CK framework, and the mobile matrix framework also. So, is that another defense capability that you have dealt with? And how does that map real-world adversary behavior?
Absolutely. The MITRE ATT&CK mobile framework, I think it's a great tool for security teams. I mean, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of trying to develop countermeasures for dealing with adversaries, in today's culture and climate. So, I mean, it provides a structured way to map real-world adversary behavior. It helps with you, like I said, in developing countermeasures and identifying the risk, the emerging threats that are on the horizon. Sort of like how it works is it maps the behavior of the adversaries, their tactics and techniques in a structured way that provides a clear picture of the threat landscape. So it helps you understand the life cycle of mobile devices, of the attack cycle, if you will, from cradle to grave, enabling a more defense in-depth strategy. It gives you actionable countermeasures. I mean, if you kind of know where your adversary is going before they get there, you're able to put defenses and countermeasures in place ahead of time. It also helps you identify lots of gaps and seams with your existing security posture. And it's all in common language. A lot of times we don't have a common lexicon between operators, if you will, and cybersecurity teams that allow us to create that synergy needed to defend our environments. And the thing that I love most about the MITRE ATT&CK framework is that it gives you scenarios. It's not like a guide or you buy a shiny new toy for your kids and you get the instructions to put something together and you always lose pieces because it's too complicated. No, it's written in common language and easily understandable. I think what was another takeaway that I was just thinking about? Oh yeah, so if you want to benchmark what you're doing currently against industry standards, the MITRE ATT&CK framework helps you map and walk through that, actually helping you have a cheat code, if you will, to enhance your overall security measures and your posture. So
you're prepared. I mean, it's a preparation technique, right? So you're using this for tabletop exercises and red team exercises, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. I tell my personnel, this is like an open book test. I mean, they've taken a lot of the guesswork out of some of this science, if you will.
Well, it is science, but I mean, each day we hear about the evolving tactics of nation state actors and others that are trying to get into, especially defense systems. I'm sure you guys are the prize. You always have been the number one most attacked, whether that's a badge of courage or a badge of honor, I'm not sure, most attacked agency. So there has to be a plan, right? So there has to be a plan to blunt some of these attacks. And it's really interesting to hear your various perspectives about this. So why mobile devices? I guess I'll ask you, why do you think mobile devices have become a flashpoint in detection? Why are they going after mobile first? What's the vulnerability there?
Absolutely. I mean, I think for me, it's a matter of visibility and control. We have visibility and control of all of our internal systems within US Transcom, but we're heavily reliant upon our commercial partners, and a lot of our commercial partners are utilizing mobile devices. So those endpoint devices, they become the soft targets, the targets of opportunity, if you will. They know that we have robust tooling, millions of dollars invested in our security suites here in US Transcom internally. So they go after some of our commercial partners. I mean, we utilize, the big ones like FedEx, Southwest, American, but we also use smaller businesses, the mom and pop stores, who may have a two-person cybersecurity team that are using their personal phone for personal issues as well as work. So it becomes a great target for adversaries and nation state actors who are extremely sophisticated in their attack means.
They are very sophisticated. Jim, I know you've had some experience with this. Can you share some real world experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. So, not to go into like a complete history lesson, but when Lookout got founded, right? This was just at the time when the iPhone had just come out, 2007, right? And so all of a sudden now we've got these smart devices which can access the web. They have these applications that can do, similar things that our, workstations could do. There were presentation development applications. There were Word document applications, games, email, right? Social media. And as mobile devices really started to take off, you got to think every individual, for the most part, globally, almost everybody's got a mobile phone today. Almost. Now, that's a pretty strong capability to go and use as an attack method, right? Because again, thinking about that human element, that's personal information that sits on those devices. If you think about your personal email, how many have emails that have tax receipts or have receipts from various different places that you go shopping, or perhaps saved information about things about your home, right? Contractors that are going to work there, dates and times, scheduling. There's a lot of very delicious information that lives on a mobile device. Now, let's not even get into things like photos or social media, right? I think right now there's a large meme going around about an incident at a Coldplay concert, right? If that was living in a mobile device, that is very big information, right? So you got to think of the value of that level of information. And because now that everybody's got one, sometimes two mobile devices, I know I've got two, that's multiple new vectors. And so attackers are following that. And especially when you add the complexity of things like, Bitcoin, right? And cryptocurrency. And now you've got money that really is kind of outside of just the banking world, but really everywhere and can be accessed in an app. Attackers are going to follow suit. The more important these mobile devices are to us, well, that's just going to be the more stronger an adversary is going to be going after them. And then you got to think from a pandemic perspective. We shut down the world and everybody needed a way to continue to work and operate. And the fastest way to do that, put MFA on everybody's mobile device. It's the cheapest, fastest way to get multi-factor authentication up and running. And now you can work from home. Well, that's a big target to go after.
Yes, it is. And are there advances that have secured the devices more thoroughly than you're describing?
So what I can speak to is what's happening here at Lookout, and I'm going to say absolutely. We have gone and done a lot, everything from an application detection engine, network detection engines, device compromise detections for jailbreaks and remote jailbreaks that's commonly found with surveillanceware. There is a lot of various different defensive capabilities that we have brought to the table. Now, mobile overall in general is still kind of on this, I'll call it a design curve. We see, from a competition standpoint, we see some players and they've got strong capabilities in some areas, but, pretty weak in others. And so I think, as people are starting to realize how big mobile is in terms of, capability that needs to be protected, we're going to start to see more and more players both enter in that space, but also bring some new and interesting capabilities as well.
All right, this is fascinating. So we have a survey that we did. We asked people who are listening to this, how does your agency typically discover personal devices or network without authorization? So, and I think that means intrusions into personal devices. 46% automated network scans, 13% incident investigations, 7% user self-enrollment, 5% manual audits, and 29% not sure or prefer not to say. So that tells me it's still sort of a cloudy picture, if you will, that there's not a real, that no one really has an answer for that question because it's still an evolving issue. So Fanico, since we're on the topic of AI and we've talked about a lot about its capabilities, talk about some of the risks when deploying AI, especially for mobile security.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about mobile devices, I mean, our lives are in those devices. I mean, your sensitive data, your personal information, even your credentials and your encryption keys are stored locally on that device. And then there's a degree of insecure communication. I talked about using public Wi-Fi and all of that, but sending information from your device back to the servers, sometimes that encryption isn't where it needs to be, and you're susceptible to man-in-the-middle attacks. There's weak authentication. Sometimes we have a bad habit of setting up bad passwords, like your old street that you used to live on, or your mom's birthday, or something like that. And then there's the opportunity for a lot of misconfigurations in the settings, as I kind of spoke about before. But what I would offer is that you need to adopt a secure development lifecycle, if you will. I mean, we talked about AI and training the models and all of that, but you have to integrate, like I said, the security practice into every phase of the app development. And then utilize like the right encryption, simple things like using TLS for your data in transit, data at rest, using HTTPS versus HTTP as you're doing web searches and things of that nature. Enforce strong authentication and access controls. Like Jim said, multi-factor authentication is key, right? But I mean, move a little bit, further past that and move towards like role-based access controls that limit access to some of your sensitive data. There's got to be like some sanitization, some containers between your personal information and then your business information, if you will. And then regularly updating, patch your devices. I mean, we all get the app update notifications. Sometimes we're like, oh, I don't feel like shutting down right now. I'll come back to it. That's a great opportunity for adversaries to exploit those weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Least privilege access, setting up, the right privileges and access to certain apps. I think taking the time to do that, as opposed to just having a peanut butter spread, a way of granting access to permissions and data on your device. And then I will foot stomp on everything, that I foot stomp here at US Transcom. Train your users on how to use those apps and AI and how to detect and be on the lookout for emerging threats and suspicious activity.
Do you recommend VPNs?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think VPN has become like muscle memory to me, to the degree that I sometimes look past it, but yes, it's foundationally you need to have VPN and utilize that as you conduct business, especially in hotels, airports, or anywhere where you have to kind of borrow some Wi-Fi.
All right, that I say Wi-Fi is very unprotected, but usually your phone, if it has any kind of device protection on it, will tell you you're on an unprotected network, right?
Absolutely.
So we have lots of questions coming in from the audience. Jim, one for you. Many mobile workflows lean on location, background, app activity, or voice access. So how much privacy are users actually giving up, and can this data be protected from leaks?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like I said before, each vendor takes the mobility approach a little bit differently. Lookout actually started as a consumer app, and so you used to be able to go to the app stores, you could download a product, and you could pay a fee. But that's how we kind of got our start. So we always came with a privacy mindset first. As things like GDPR, came out, as the California Consumer Protection Act and various other legislation has gotten enacted globally, we followed suit. We always take that privacy first. So things like requiring location information, we don't. In fact, for the most part, that requires an MDM, or that requires invasive technology to be put in place. So that's not something that we do. It's something that if you have an MDM, then we can access through that MDM. But for the most part, that's not information that we're going to be collecting. We have to be given that information. And there is one more that I did want to just take a look at. I kind of chuckled because there was a comment about, BYO, or bring your own device, and kind of staying away from it, right? And I did just want to quickly take a moment and say, typically I would say yes. But again, as vendors come up with innovation, one of the things that we created was something called conditional access. And what that means is we can actually set a risk policy on the device where users can continue using the device. But once that risk policy has been met, meaning an organization says, you know what, this is too risky. I don't want that level of risk connecting to my environment. I don't want them connecting to my, applications and my workloads. It gets cut off. Domains are blocked. So they can still use their phone. They can still do whatever they want. They still have their privacy intact, but they won't connect to that sensitive information. And that was actually, something that we had customers, similar concerns. We don't want BYO. Well, we made it easy for BYO to actually get included.
Okay. And Fanika, what's your perspective on bring your own device?
From a security perspective, I have my apprehensions, but from a business model, I understand the cost savings associated with it, and being able to be a little bit more mobile and be a great road warrior, if you will. So I'm torn. I mainly focus on the risk, and we've entertained it here a bit in US Transcom, but due to the sensitive nature of our mission, I've kind of pushed away from it. But as I engage and talk to my commercial partners, they love the idea. It simplifies it all. I carry two phones, a personal phone and a work phone. For my commercial partners, they are salivating at the idea of just having one device to rule them all and be a bit more efficient. But I do push out a biweekly newsletter, and I'm always key on providing tidbits on this is what you need to do if you're going to pursue a bring your own device to work type model, because you are a US Transcom customer and you're key to the success of our mission. So don't be that weak link in the nicest way possible.
That is true. You're only as strong as your weakest link, right? So that's been proven over and over again. So we're reaching the end of our conversation. And I want to ask both of you, what advice would you give to agencies who are modernizing their mobile security programs? Here we are, we're in conversation. We've identified the problem. So what are we thinking about the solutions, or at least setting yourself up for solutions? Finico, do you want to start?
Absolutely. At the very least, select there are a myriad of different options for mobile threat defense solutions that are out there. I do not endorse any of these, but you have Trellix Mobile Security, you have CrowdStrike Falcon for mobile, Microsoft Defender for endpoint. Select one and integrate that into your operational model. Vulnerability management has got to be key. Patching and addressing your vulnerabilities in a timely manner. That's just got to be rudimentary to what you're doing. Strong authentication and access controls, like Jim was talking about, MFA, using biometrics, Face ID, fingerprint scanners, generate strong passwords. Don't use your mom's name or your favorite pet's name, 123, and then adopt a zero trust framework. Zero trust is the way to go. It's how we defend ourselves in the future.
So when you talk about these solutions, do you have, do you get details about how effective they have been for other clients, or do you have details yourself about how they have worked internally? How do you evaluate that?
Absolutely. For me, I have the benefit of taking a whole of government approach. So I have FBI, CIA, and NSA personnel that work with me. So anytime that we look to leverage a capability, or if one of our commercial partners is leveraging a capability, we take a whole of government approach to the validation, and we can give tidbits and recommendations on whether or not our partners should adopt that technology.
Is there anything you'd like to see, a capability, a development that you'd like to, see in the marketplace that maybe the contractor community could provide?
Just more data analytics that can be shared across the whole, so to speak. But that can come across as spying a little bit, because everyone has their intellectual property and their personal information. But I feel like we try to fight in silos a lot of times in government. And I wish there was a capability out there that built a bit more connective tissue so that we can fight as a whole, as opposed to several individual components with the same goal and mission involved or in mind.
All right, that's great information. Thank you very much. We have a question for you. How important are the DoD STIGs when trying to create a secure mobile solution?
STIGs are crucial, right? That's bread and butter to what we do in security is tracking the compliance with STIGs, and I have the benefit of being able to influence that a little bit because of my position in government. But enforcement of STIGs and policy, I can't highlight that the most. But governance, policy, STIGs, and things of that nature are key to what we do in security. So it's something that we love and gravitate to.
Thanks, Finico. And Jim, same question to you. So what advice would you give agencies who are modernizing their mobile security programs?
Yeah, great question. And, I think I'd like to take, a moment to just take a look at what Ukraine's doing from a modernization effort. They're utilizing Android tablets for command and control systems, both from an ability for artillery strikes, for drone strikes. It's not just, hey, I need my Facebook, but I also need my work email too, or my work applications. These guys are innovating on the battlefield with mobility devices. So I think in that aspect, I think the government, can take the approach of learning what other folks are doing, and Finico brought this up, right? Taking that whole of government approach. What are the mission partners doing? How are they utilizing mobility devices? But then more importantly, what are they doing to secure it, right? And unfortunately, for Ukraine's perspective, we actually did some work where we helped identify, some vulnerability chains that got utilized for Sandworm, a Russia-based threat actor, to attack those devices. But we helped that mission partner and figure out what was going on. But more importantly, that's that beauty of that private-public partnership working, almost like in a synergy, right? We're called upon, hey, help us figure this out. We solved the problem, and now let's take that next step forward. Now, from a mobility standpoint, if I was to say, hey, what kind of advice? Definitely do, the deep dive into capabilities. There's a lot of information that's out there. There's a lot of players that are now getting in the mobility space. And as I said earlier, there's a lot of things that they do really well. There's a lot of things that they don't do so well. Going through the motions of, will this actually defend my mobile device? Is this going to provide me meaningful data? Is it going to stop the attacks that are coming towards mobile devices? That's the answer that really needs to get answered. And of course, then, is it supporting the mission? I would recommend from a mobile perspective and a mobile program, a combined MDM and MTD is almost a must. If somebody drops the device and they lose it, if it gets stolen, that MDM has the ability for remote wipe capabilities, and with MTD, you're talking about the ability to stop the threats from landing on those devices. You're also talking about, again, protecting that human element, which is what adversaries are going against today. Being able to stop the SMS phishing messages, stop the Signal and WhatsApp messages, hey, you have to pay a toll, which may not even exist in your location. When I was in Germany, I got, toll messages that I had to go and pay with a phishing link. These are the things that, attackers are kind of prying on in order to hopefully either get monetary value or a way to access, corporate information. The other thing that I would say is incorporate your mobility teams into the security teams. I can't stress this enough. I hate that I hear when I talk to customers that they don't talk. Mobile guys, they're in charge of deployment, integration, and the day-to-day. Security guys, they just do the things. Every once in a while, hey, I have to pull a mobile device, or some of that. Like they should really work hand in hand, because if you've got a mobility program, security should know about it. Left hand should be talking to the right hand, type capability. And especially with a lot of the innovation that Lookout's bringing to the table, if you choose another vendor, I'm sorry. Hopefully you have some IR services in your back pocket, but a little tooth and little tongue in cheek there. But the reality is there's a lot of innovation that's happening today, and security teams need access to that data. Like I brought up, AI with anti-phishing capabilities, we're prototyping around phishing. That's valuable data to those security teams to be able to actually go and start to respond to some of these threats.
So Thank you so much for that answer. Thank you, Fanico, for your contributions. This has been a fascinating conversation. I think this is one of the most important topics that I have discussed this year. So we thank you so much for your insight and your eloquence today, talking to us about this very important topic of mobile security. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for tuning in, for checking us out today. Please remember to go to fedinsider.com for more details on great webinars like this one. And we turn it back over to our publisher, Claudia Hosky, to wrap things up for us today. Claudia?
Thank you, Jane, and thank you again to our speakers and to our audience. Thank you for your participation. Training certificates will be emailed after the webinar ends. And remember to log back in the next day or two if you want to download a copy of our closed captioning transcript. You may be interested in attending our 2025 5G Summit coming up on August 20th in Reston, Virginia. That's a face-to-face training event. We'll share links from the slides in our follow-up email, and as Jane mentioned, you can also visit fedinsider.com to see what's coming up and register for multiple events at the same time. And while you're there, you can check out our podcast, Feds at the Edge. And with that, this is Fed Insider, signing off.